Listen, you have to monitor his innings. I get it, but this guy looks pretty damn impressive. Welcome into Northside Territory, Foul Territories Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma with my partner Patrick Mooney. We cover the Cubs for The Athletic. Thank you for listening. Patrick, the Cubs offense has been a mess. It finally woke up for one inning, at least, on Tuesday night and got them a win. But as nice as that felt for fans, I'm sure, to finally see some offense, I think the story of that evening was Ben Brown, 7 no-hit innings. This is a guy, like, it's fascinating. Back-to-back nights, Cubs starting pitchers have dominated a really strong and potent Milwaukee Brewers offense. It was, I believe, by a few metrics, the number 3 offense in baseball coming into this series. These are 2 pitchers who lean on 2 pitches for the most part, and they pitched well enough to shut down this offense. And Ben Brown, we keep talking about when he's going to move to the bullpen. The Cubs need more help there. Jordan Wicks made another rehab outing in Iowa. He'll make another one in 5 days from that. What happens with Ben Brown is the question, right, that everyone's asking. Listen, you have to monitor his innings. I get it, but this guy looks pretty damn impressive.
I guess the Cubs did put the hottest pitcher on the planet on ice and Shota Imanaga, so I guess we can't assume that just because Ben Brown throws 7 no-hit innings that he's there to stay in the rotation. But a pretty impressive audition. I think JD on the broadcast last night was saying, if you take out one inning in his major league debut, his ERA this year is off the charts, kind of in that, not quite Shota, but maybe in the Javier Assad Tyone territory, which is extremely impressive. And that's what the Cubs need. They need guys to just kind of break out of the box and put together seasons that are unexpected. That's how this team is going to get from that 83 win range up towards 90, because they didn't necessarily buy it in bulk on the free agent market. They made a relatively under the radar trade for Michael Busch. They need some internal improvements. And you were there, you could speak to kind of the scene and the environment, but what if this guy's a dude and that they have, at the back of their rotation, just a physically imposing guy who throws super hard, even by the standards of today's game, and also someone who literally studied how Counsell could use pitchers with the Brewers. A very thoughtful guy who's serious about his craft.
Yeah, just some numbers to back this up. You don't even need to throw out that first outing. I get why you would. It was a lot of bad luck, but 2.72 ERA overall, 29.9 strikeout rate, 9.2% walk rate. Those are the type of numbers that elite starters put up. What's the innings total? The innings total is 46 1/3. He's doing a lot. I believe he has 6 starts and 30 innings in those starts. And he's just, a lot of those starts were him still building up, him, filling in spot starts. It's pretty amazing how he's just been so malleable and able to fill any role for them. We've seen it before, right? We've seen guys fill different roles before. Outside of Assad, I don't really remember someone doing it so seamlessly and so well, right? Assad did it,
and against good teams too.
Right. These aren't. He's not facing weak teams. He's doing it with 2 pitches. Yesterday, Counsell called the fastball angry. He said it was an angry fastball. It averaged 96.4 96.9 yesterday. That's a tick up, half a mile up from the year average. I saw, I happened to be looking, I was eating dinner and saw like the beginning of the Brewers broadcast in the media cafeteria there, and it said something about like average fastball velocity for starters, and Ben Brown wasn't up there, right? But Freddie Peralta was, and it was like 96.3. So Ben Brown, like, if he qualified for that, he'd have one of the hardest. Like, I think Freddie Peralta was like fifth, right, on whatever list they had, and Ben Brown would be up there for hardest fastball velocity for a starter if he qualified. The Cubs don't really have that, right? Like, who's their fastball, like their big velocity guy in their rotation, right? It's that guy's not really there. Now he is at this point in time, 17 looking strikes with the fastball. Like, he's got guys guessing. He got 10 whiffs on the curveball. It's right now, it's impressive, right? We'll see if the league catches up to him. What happens as he progresses, how they have to monitor his innings. Like you said, they're monitoring Shota's innings. They're monitoring how they're using Shota. They're like, Counsell isn't afraid to do unpopular things. He pulled a guy with a no-hitter with through 7 innings, right? I don't think anybody was surprised by that that's been watching baseball over the past 10 years, right? Especially with Counsell. I think Counsell's done that before with other pitchers in Milwaukee. Like, once it got through like 4 or 5, I was like, okay, his pitch count's low, but he's not going over 95, 100 pitches. Like, I think 100 was his max. I would have been surprised if he even hit 100. There was just no chance he was finishing that unless he had these insanely efficient innings. But we've focused so much on the bad offense that I really think we're overlooking the starting pitching, and it's not just and it's not just good. It's been great, and it like completely, at least for me, really unexpected. I did not expect them to be this good of a pitching staff, starting wise. I thought they'd be fine, but 3.30 ERA from the starters is 6th best in baseball, second in the NL to a Phillies team that's just been awesome.
I thought back to at the end of last season, the Cubs are eliminated, and David Ross is doing one of his pregame sessions, and someone kind of, I don't know if it was like a lobbed a softball, but kind of the premise was like, hey, what a building block for this year, and guys get experience. And Ross's mind went straight to, well, we had a lot of guys we were counting on this year, and they didn't really show up. And Ben Brown, it wasn't his fault, and it would have been like kind of an aggressive ahead of schedule push, but there was a time where they thought he could help in that bullpen. He got hurt, season got off track. He wasn't necessarily like the guy that Ross would have been thinking of. But he was certainly in that kind of bucket. And, if things click for him, we've seen Hayden Wisniewski make major contributions already. You see Javier Assad taking that next step. There are a lot of things that you can point to of like, okay, this is why when the offense is scuffling, you can see this Cubs team staying in the hunt all the way until the end. And I think for us who followed this kind of system and organization for a while, it's important to see results at the major league level. And that should be obvious, but it's kind of not, because of the way prospects are covered and how much, energy and effort was expended around all these different trade deadlines. And, I think people feel good about Pete Crow Armstrong, and Kevin Alcantara is super young. So there's a lot of time for these deals to kind of be reevaluated. But that 21 trade deadline hasn't really like wowed anyone yet, right? In terms of like major league results or what they're counting on at the major league level. And, that David Robertson for Ben Brown trade is looking good. Still looks good for the Phillies. I mean, I think Dave Robertson pitched in the World Series for them, so this is not a Phillies thing. But our colleague Matt Gelb had written at the time of Phillies had like maybe 2 or 3 pitching prospects that were just like off the table, and I don't think either. I think it was Mick Abel and maybe Griff McGarry, like guys who are not in the majors yet. And so if you have, and I believe Wisniewski deal came around that time too. So like if you like, what if the Cubs get like 2 starters off of that trade deadline, not the big one that everyone was talking about of Bryant, Rizzo, and Javi, but just looking at Ben Brown, I mean, the guy's just enormous. And maybe this is like, we've listened to too many old scouts over the years, but it's kind of nice to see someone who's like legit 6'5", 6'6", who's gotten a lot bigger since he's come in the Cubs system and is not just, oh, wow, he throws really hard. It's like, no, he knows how to pitch. He has a curveball. Like he has some composure and presence out there on the mound. And I mean, just coming up huge at a time when the Cubs needed it. And I know you were sitting there at your laptop. Like that's something about that stadium, Cubs Brewers, like crazy stuff happens late. So I'm sure you were in rewrite mode a couple of times there.
Yeah. I had a story where I had a feeling not to write it, right? Like I had a story prepped for Jed on the offense, but I wasn't going to fit. I was like, if this guy pulls off a no-hitter, if he actually goes deep, if it's a combined no-hitter, obviously I had to change course. But I just didn't trust either. You're right. When I'm in Milwaukee, I'm just like, this is, first of all, I'm like high alert for a foul ball to the skull. Yes. and secondly, I'm just like, weird crap is going to happen. And like, frankly, weird crap did happen. The way that rally started for the Cubs was kind of insane. Like that line drive to McGill, it hit his elbow and we could hear it clearly. Like the sound of it was pretty sick. And you could see him. It's not funny because the guy was in real pain, but you could kind of see him like immediately react and start walking towards the dugout, but then like look at the ball and kind of consider like, do I pick this up? And it was like, nope, I'm heading back to the dugout. Like I'm done. And like, I think the third baseman had to like run to go get it. Vasquez scored, right? And that started the big 5-run rally the Cubs had there in the 10th. But it was one of those things like it's typical Cubs Brewers. Weird stuff happens. You don't expect it to. The Hector Neris balk. That's the first time I've seen Counsell just like flat, like pretty annoyed after we ask him a question, and not annoyed at us, but like someone asked about the balk, and he just like said like that, like basically he didn't think it was a balk, and that it, the league does this. They let it go, they let it go, they let it go. They don't make the call, and then all of a sudden they call it in the critical situation. And he's like, and I don't think it was a balk either anyway. And I believe Megan Montemurro of the Tribune talked to Neris, who said the same thing. He's like, it was just, he said the only reason, he's like, maybe they were confused because essentially I think his point was maybe they were confused because he was quicker to the plate that time. But he does that. I mean, you're supposed to vary your time. That's what pitchers do. That's what good pitchers do. I never saw a replay. I don't know. Clearly there were plenty of people pissed, and I believe Daniel Moscos got thrown out. Yency Almonte got thrown out. Of all the
dude
people
on the injured list gets thrown out.
The dude on the injured list and the assistant pitching coach got thrown out. So it was a wild one. There was the stolen home run from Cody Bellinger. Like it looked like Willy Adames had another big home run. Willy Adames ends up getting the game tying single. Like this is just a fun matchup, a fun rivalry that obviously has gotten more intense with Counsell around. Counsell was asked more about Monday's reception. He really does seem like he's just like all good with it. Who knows if he, if it hurts him deeply. But I don't
You'd
get
be
the
pretty
feeling.
good with it too if you got a $40 million deal.
Yeah, yes,
You didn't have to
exactly.
move, and
Yeah, and get to manage a big market club, and one of the more well-known teams in across sports. Yeah, I think he's doing fine. He's good with his decision. I joke it. I thought my favorite sign, I can't remember if I said this
no,
yesterday,
get it. What is
but
it?
my favorite sign was something to the effect of we'll never forget you, Greg, with a G. And I just thought that was hilarious. I was like, it wasn't mean-spirited. It was just, having fun and joking around. I liked that sign. I asked Counsell if he had a favorite sign. And he started to talk about it, and then he realized like there were too many people and cameras around, and I think it may have essentially it sounded like he came home, the family was around the table, sitting around, joking around, having some fun, and a lot of his kids had gotten texts and screenshots of various signs, and they were sharing them with their dad, and kind of laughing at it, and I think some of them weren't shareable with the public, but it sounded like they had some fun. The kids especially seemed to be getting a chuckle out of some of these signs, so I thought that was fun. How Counsell, even his kids are giving him a hard time and enjoying the moment, a little over the top. I mean, that's what fans do. It's fun, have fun with it. As long as it's not mean spirited or hate filled, I have no issues.
I mean, he's pretty sarcastic guy. Like it doesn't really come across during those press conferences, and he kind of doles it out with us like in smaller portions. But I think it was Justin Steele who said it towards the end of spring training. It was asked about Counsell, and he's like, he's a lot more funny than I thought he would be. He seems so serious across the way in the other dugout. And I talked to Ryan Flaherty, the Cubs bench coach, recently, and just asked a general Counsell question. He said the same thing. He's a lot wittier than you'd think, and that he has a presence when he's addressing the group. And so because of his sarcasm, and he has a little bit of cynicism, he definitely has an edge to him. So that's why I could totally see him getting a kick out of some of those signs, especially since he landed in such a great spot and had done his job for such a long time and had kind of, hit a ceiling for the most part and wanted something different. And I do think from what we've heard and kind of observed, like it's a pretty genuine, like family person, and certainly like rooted in Wisconsin. You can't dispute his credentials in that regard as someone who grew up the son of a Brewers employee and played for the team, and could have lived anywhere he wanted and chose to go back to Whitefish Bay, Wisconsin. And so I do think we're kind of just at the start of this. I think, let's see as the years go on, like how much more anger and, how he responds to some of this stuff. It could certainly get like a little more chippy, because you're right. Like the press box there, when you say like worrying about foul balls hit straight back, like it is a low open press box. You can turn over your left shoulder and there's a huge indent from, whatever foul ball came there and like busted up part of the press box. And so it is an awesome place to see a game, like great environment for Cubs Brewers. And I'm curious, since you were there talking to Jed Hoyer, what does the team president think of where things are right now with the Cubs?
Yeah, I don't think you'll be surprised to hear that Jed Hoyer is not panicking. He's not freaking out. He's not trading everyone. He's not calling up every AAA bat. to fix this offense. He is trusting the players that they, expected to put together a great season, right? Like these are, I know it's interesting that there's a lot of people who are like, what track record do they have? What's the track record of these players? And it's like, yeah, they're not superstars. I get what you're saying. If your point is they haven't won a ton of World Series or playoff games or outside of Dansby Swanson and Cody Bellinger, I get that, right? They're not all a bunch of MVPs, but they're all of them, not all of them, but all the veterans on that group are better offensive players than what they've put up this season.
Yes.
Like Dansby Swanson is like an 80 at like an 80 weighted runs created plus. I mean, that's not like, I get it. He's never been the superstar on offense, but he's never been that either.
Yeah.
Like last 2 years, it's been like well above average, right? Ian Happ is at 100 weighted runs created plus. That would be, or 102. That would be the worst of his career. Seiya Suzuki, yes, I know you've seen struggles from him at times. His average weight, like over 2 years, he's put together a 122 weighted runs created plus. He's at 100. Like these guys are better players than this. They're better offensive performers than what we've seen. The expectation from Craig Counsell, from Jed Hoyer, from majority of the people in that front office and that coaching staff and on the field are that they're going to perform better offensively. So there's no panic there. And the reality is Jed Hoyer, Craig Counsell, they've seen struggles from their teams only to see them turn it around. It wasn't that long ago. Last year, the Cubs were 10 games under 500, got to 11 games over 500 by September. I believe it was 10 games over in June, 10 games under in June.
Correct. Yeah.
Last year,
middle of June. Yeah.
Last year, the Brewers were, I want to say 18 and 9. They were 34 and 34 later that season. Essentially the same thing we're seeing now.
Stat, yeah.
They got swept by Colorado during that bad stretch and Oakland. Like they weren't, it wasn't even like a tough stretch for them as far as schedule wise. They were bad. They won 92 games.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these guys have seen this before. They are not going to panic. And again, I'm going to say this probably a lot during this podcast. I get it. Fans, you're allowed to panic. You're allowed to react to every game. You're allowed to overreact. You're allowed to be angry. Their job is to not be that way. Their job is to trust that they've done the right things. Or if they see things that they know that they're like, I was worried about this in the first place, and they're seeing it play out, yeah, they'll make moves. I mean, it's not like they haven't made changes. It's not like they haven't called guys up and tried different things. It's I think that Brewer stat really hit me. Like I was just curious. I was going to go back through the years, and I had to go back just to last season.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, 92 wins, and they blew a huge, a nice start to the season, and they still end up at 92 wins. Like, this is just normal in baseball. Most teams, I think a lot of this stems from, for Cubs fans, the best season they've seen, there were no hiccups. There was one 10-15 stretch in 2016, but that's what they think a great season has to be. Like a good season is that and only that, right? It's like they've almost forgotten about 2015 when they were 500 around till like June, right? Or July, essentially.
I mean, the trade deadline, I believe they were in Milwaukee actually, and they were at that point, maybe they were a couple games over 500, but it was kind of modified at the trade deadline, then caught fire really when the Giants came in as the defending champs. That I want to say early to mid-August, and
Right.
That's when it was Joe Madden said like it's go time and pulling
Right.
Jason Hamill,
Right.
moving Starlin off shortstop. So you're right. I think Counsell's teams have finished strong historically. That this Cubs team is built to be a second half team. When you look at the schedule, when you look at the trade deadline, there are still some, cards they can play or levers they can pull from the farm system. That's not like a right this second thing, but I think it's not that hard to envision Counsell at some point just throwing up his hands and be like, I want PCA in center. I want defense. I want more defense here. If what Michael Busch is going through is what name your favorite Cubs prospect is going to go through on like a deeper, probably more extended level. I mean, that guy's like 26 and just crushed it in the minors and had a lot of plate appearances at the high levels of the minors. Like, I don't know if you really need to throw, an Owen Casey in there right now. And then we'll see with injuries too. I mean, that's how they're going to have to respond. But look, if you get pitching like you have the last couple days, even in St. Louis, it wasn't like bad pitching. Like if you can get that on a consistent basis, which I think the Cubs will, like you can make those other tweaks in the weeks ahead at the trade deadline and down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they do go get another bat, right? And maybe they they're certainly getting relief help. They're just not going to sit on their hands when it comes to the bullpen. There will be at least one reliever acquired, and I just expect this to turn. Like this team is too talented, and the starting pitching is too good. Like maybe that turns, and it makes this all moot. And the pitching falls apart. It wouldn't be the first time we've seen that, right? We
see what Shota does against the Brewers and kind of
like it's very possible that the pitching falls apart, right? I get that, and you could say that they've wasted good starting pitching. Sure, fair enough. If that's what happens, that's what happens. It doesn't seem like it seems like they very much have the depth to overcome that. At the moment, it seems like they do. It's you mentioned it before, but we've kind of been waiting for this. You and I've kind of like joked, like, where's this pitching? Like, I thought they had a lot of pitching depth. Where are the guys coming from? And it's finally arrived, right? It's more than just one or two players that you can point to. There's a lot of homegrown pitching now on this roster, and probably more to come. I understand you'd obviously like more in the bullpen, but nobody's going to complain about really good starting pitchers being developed through the organization, right? And I'm very curious to see how they handle Jordan Wicks's return. If they bring him back right away, what they want to do there. He's got one more start at least, I believe. So he went 3 2/3 or maybe 3 1/3 on Tuesday night, and they kind of gave him a 3 days rest, and now it'll be normal rest for his next start, and then they'll kind of evaluate from there. But I think that's going to be a fascinating decision. People are going to look purely at results and see, like, why move Ben Brown? Jordan Wicks had like a 5 ERA or whatever. I'm not going to argue with that. I do think Jordan Wicks has a chance to be a really impactful pitcher this year and for this team. It's going to be interesting. Like the pitching is a strength, and when you have starting pitching, you can compete. Like there's a way to make it work, even if the offense can't be like this. It can't be the worst in baseball.
The worst in baseball for the next 4 months, like that. Not be for
that wouldn't. But even if the offense gets to average, league average, if you have great starting pitching and you piece together the bullpen, which hey, Craig Counsell apparently we've heard is good. Yeah, earn that paycheck by piecing it together. Then you have a good team. right? Maybe not a great team, maybe not a World Series winning team, but you have a good team. If you
in a
have
bad division, yeah, you got.
Yes, yeah. In a division that is still up for grabs. I mean, you said it yesterday. We could be talking. We'll talk again after this series is over. One loss was panic, right? It was more of the same on offense. They take these next three. They've taken one, right? If they can take three, you suddenly feel very differently about everything that's going on with this team. I'm not saying they will, because I don't trust anything that happens in Milwaukee. It's the 4-game series. It just feels like split written all over it, in my opinion. But
no doubt.
We'll see what happens over the next couple days. We'll be back at it. We'll be talking to you guys again Thursday night. Maybe you'll hear us Friday morning. We'll see how that works. But there's 2 more games in this series, and then what is this weekend? Is it Cincinnati? At
Cincinnati off day, White Sox.
Okay, so in
Cincinnati
theory,
again after that. It's been a lot of
so in
teams
theory,
bunched together. Yeah,
things should lighten up a little bit.
yes,
here. You would
very much so.
You would like to think that this is a moment in time where the Cubs could get going. And again, at a certain point, if they do get going, and they're beating up on weaker competition, we can have this discussion of, hey, this team needs to show us they can beat good pitching, right? Well, we can have that discussion at some point, but right now it's just like, get some wins, get back on track, start looking like a good offense and a good team again, and we can start talking about more things in depth, because what we had seen obviously wasn't acceptable offensively. But they had 1 inning. Maybe that can be the sigh of relief. They have great pitchers, and Shota Imanaga is going to try and show what he can do in Milwaukee. Did he face the Brewers last time? Do you remember?
That's a good question.
I just want to make sure before we go, let's just check that, because this could be his first time facing a team twice, and it is not. He did not face the Brewers. Okay, so this still won't be the second time he faces a team. We'll see how that goes for him. 2 starts. If it's a third time that the Cubs shut down a Brewers offense, that's a really impressive way to go to start the series. We'll see what happens. Thank you for listening. This is Northside Territory. Make sure to rate and review, subscribe, do all those good things that you do for a podcast. Read Patrick and my work at The Athletic. We got the Cubs covered for you. We'll be on the road a lot, and we're at every home game, so make sure you're checking the site out. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back at you later this week. Take care.